It's an honor to be here. As you were emphasizing, what did you say, 238 years? 237 years? How much was it? Rabbi Zalman, Colel Chabad, how many years? Okay, do the math. It immediately evoked something that many people don't pay attention to. Talk about consistency and longevity. They say those that do business with the Chinese say the Chinese don't respect anyone except the Jews. Not love, but respect. Because the Jews are the only ones that are here longer than they on this earth. When President Nixon visited China, I don't know if anyone here is old enough to remember. You all look so young to me, and my eyesight is pretty good. 1971. So Western journalists for the first time had access to the Chinese culture. It was a closed culture. It was after Mao Zedong died, and the new premier was Chou En-lai. And one of the journalists asked him, what does he think about the American Revolution? What is his opinion about the American Revolution? And he said, it's too early to tell. Because American Revolution, we're now entering the 250th year, and Chinese civilization is here for 2,500 years. But there's one people that's here longer, and that is the Jewish people. You and I, and our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents. So maybe subconsciously the world, including the anti-Semites, recognize this. But it's important to emphasize, because this is what we say, Am Yisrael Chai, Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi, Ubnei Yisrael Lo Chalisam, that we have an eternal nature to us that no one has seemed to have been able to master. You think about it. All the civilizations that came and went, the great Roman Empire, the rise and fall of the Romans, and before that, the Babylonians and the Assyrians and the Egyptians, and after that, the Ottomans, the Spanish, the list goes on. So when we're here together to honor a tzedakah that was established almost 250 years ago, interestingly, almost corresponding to the founding of this country, which the Rebbe would refer to a Malchus Shel Chesed. No country in history has ever given as much charity as the United States, and not just Jews, which is itself quite a phenomenon. Because the nature of human beings is the more you have, the more you keep. People are not natural givers. There's a certain selfishness, self-interest. So the very concept that Avraham Avinu instituted almost 4,000 years ago, Lemanashi Yitzavas Bonavas Bese Achrav Lases Tzedakah Mishpat, tzedakah was completely counter to the society at the time, and frankly throughout history. That's why he was such a threat. He was a pioneer that we're here not to take but to give. Today this has become more popular, but it took thousands of years. It was only the Jews that always knew that the first and most foundational element in every community is building a gemach, tzedakah. The Torah is filled with references. And we were actually seen as strange and even barbaric for our kindness. We were seen as naive. So almost 250 years ago, our country was founded by Christians, almost parallel to the time when the Alter Rebbe founded Colel Chabad, Tzedakah Eretz Yisrael. It's food for thought. I think it would be amiss of me if I did not state a very important part of our lives today, and that is we're living in historic times. I think all of us know it. But I want to emphasize it in a real glaring way. I mean, every time is historic, but this is truly historic. And being on a personal level, I was able to experience something as a personal witness of some of this history in the making. I'll share some of behind the scenes that's not so publicized in the media. So what the world calls October 7th and we call Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah was itself a major event, as was pointed out in so many different ways. Obviously a tragic one. But how it's evolved in the last 6 weeks with Israel attack on Iran, and before that on Hezbollah in Lebanon, and still in the quagmire of Gaza, there's no question that events have shifted on a geopolitical level that no one even knows where it's going to go to. However, being a nation that's here for thousands of years, we do know where it's going because it was all predicted. This is one of the, we'll call it more cryptic messages that you can find in the written Torah and many prophecies, and especially in the oral Torah and Torah Shel Peh and Midrashim, that refer to what will happen at the end of days. Confrontations between whom? Between the children of Avraham Avinu, Ishmael, the ancestor of the Arab and later become the Muslim world, Yitzchak, ancestor and our forefather of the Jewish world, and Yitzchak had two children, Yaakov and Esav. Esav's grandson was called what? The last Rashi in Parsha Vayishlach, Rome, Western, Malchus Edom, which was the Romans that destroyed the Second Temple. So here you have the confrontations of these three children that go back thousands of years. They were already fighting then, is playing itself out now. And this isn't my innovation. This, as I said, is written explicitly in some places more hinted to, that's exactly what Avram Avinu, Abraham, was shown in the vision of the Bris Bein Absarim. If you read those cryptic verses in Parsha Lech Lecha, where Hashem shows him something, shows him what's the future, and it says that a shudder came over, a tremble over Avram Avinu. It was dark. And everyone asked the question, what's he referring to? So it says Hashem showed Avram what would happen to his grandchildren, the four great empires. And they all go back to these three children, Yishmael, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Esav. So when you see it playing itself out today, it shouldn't be a surprise. We may not know exactly the details, but if you're intrigued by this topic, I'm not going to go through all the elaborate details. I'll just quote one Zohar at the end of Parsha Va'era. But I'll tell you the story behind it. Some of you may be familiar, there was a man called Reb Zev Wolf Greenglass. He came from Atvosk in Poland, joined the Chabad Yeshiva. These are some of the students that ended up in Shanghai after World War II, and that he ended up in Montreal. He was known as a Makubal, a Kabbalist. A very erlich, a very refined and powerful Jew. In 1980, he wrote a note to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Being someone that worked for the Rebbe, I was a chayzer and a maniach, remembering the Rebbe's farbrengens on Shabbos, and then documenting them for posterity. So I have this note that he wrote to the Rebbe and the Rebbe's answer. He quotes a discourse, a Maimer Chassidus, from the Rebbe Marash, the fourth Chabad Rebbe, youngest son of the Tzemach Tzedek, where he writes that Avram hispalel al b'nai Yishmael, Abraham prayed for his son Yishmael, Lu Yichya Yishmael lefonov. He prayed for him, it was his son. And he cared and loved him. And he wanted him to thrive. Even though he had to banish him at Sarah's instructions. But then the Rebbe Marash adds this line. Listen to this. Af sheyoda Avram masha yase Yishmael ba'achris hayomim. Even though Avram knew what Yishmael would do at the end of days, he still prayed for him. So Rabbi Greenglass asked the Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1980, what does the Rebbe Marash mean? What did Avram know? What would Yishmael do at the end of days? And he suggests, is it referring to a Zohar at the end of Parsha Va'era, which I'll sum up in a moment, and the Rebbe acknowledged yes, and added, look also at the Zohar at the end of Parsha Balak, and look at the Piyut, Yisrael Neisha, on the third day of Slichus, which just for the record is the day after September 11th, where it says, Kila Soyer v'chesnei, that may Soyer is a name, another name for Esav, and Chesnei, his father-in-law, may they be eliminated. So yet another reference. And V'oid, the Rebbe adds, meaning there are more sources. What does it say in Zohar? It says that the Sar of Yishmael, the angel of Yishmael, comes to God and says, Yishmael is also your son, and he deserves to be rewarded. He was also circumcised. So this is an open prophecy from a Zohar that says, Hashem says, you're right. However, since he was circumcised at age 13, not 8 days, like Yitzchak, so his reward will be limited. He will have control over Israel for a few hundred years. That's what it says in the Zohar. And then, at the end of days, Yishmael will begin to become aggressive and attack Esav, Edom, and the Jewish people. And there'll be wars. And at the end, Israel will win the battles and Mashiach will come. This is not the only place this is referred to. This is a note. I have the handwritten note. And I remember reading it then, it was quite surprising, but then seeing how events unfolded. So let me share this with you. Some of you may be aware, I'm a good friend, a personal friend of the president of Argentina, Javier Milei. You've heard of him? Okay. You're applauding him or me? Or both? Friendship. Okay. It's a long story how I became his friend, and I don't know what kind of time limit we have here and the curfew in this part of the world. But I'll just cut to the point that I want to address here. I got to know him September 2023, a month right before the attack of October 7th. And he was elected in that year, November. A world leader. He's a head of state. We are very close personal friends. As a matter of fact, this morning I just communicated with him. WhatsApp is his favorite way of communicating. And very spiritual man. He's not a politician. He's very smart, savvy, unbelievable instincts. And he just naturally loves Judaism and Torah. And you may wonder from where. I have no idea. It's not from me. I'm not taking any credit for it. It's not from any rabbis. Actually, thank God. It's straight from the source. He's a godly person. I don't want to exaggerate when I tell you he reads the Parsha every day. But more importantly, he takes personal lessons in his life. This is not so known, but I can tell you that silently he's making a revolution, not just in Argentina, but even in Israel. And I'll share with you how. So the rumors about whether he's going to become Jewish or not, he never told me he wants to become Jewish. Once we talked about it, I told him, listen, we have enough Jewish corrupt politicians, you know. So he says, how do you know I'll be corrupt? I said, let's just keep it safe. So 6 weeks ago, literally 6 weeks, a little more than 7 weeks ago, he traveled to Israel. And he invited me to come along. He came through Europe, I came from New York. We landed on Monday night. The date would be, when did Israel attack Iran? That was Friday. What was it? I don't remember the exact date, but it was that week, that Monday, that Tuesday. And he loves to hug. He says, come to Israel. I want to hug the wall and I want to hug you. The wall first, then me. Anyway, we have that very personal connection. It's not formal. I have no official position. So I arrived there. And I spent time with him. The King David Hotel is where he stayed. And he had formal meetings. It was an official state visit. And on Tuesday, that's when he met Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. He gave him the picture of the Rebbe, a portrait that he made for him. And they spoke about that. And I wasn't there at that meeting because that was an official meeting just with him, those two. But through the week, we had maybe 6, 7 different events. And I'll just point out one or two that are relevant to this context. Wednesday night, the Knesset, for the first time, honored an Argentinian president. They honored him. The full Knesset seating. And the head of the Knesset, Ohana, he opened up the proceedings. Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke. The head of the opposition, Yair Lapid, spoke. And they're all quoting Torah. And they say clearly, because President Milei reads the Torah and loves the Torah, they're all quoting the Parsha. One quoted Parsha Ba'aleischa, it was the week of Ba'aleischa. One quoted, they're quoting the Torah and they're quoting the Lubavitcher Rebbe, all in his honor. So literally, I was sitting there, someone who said to me, this is the first time he used the word Shem Shamayim Shogar in this building, to this extent. Obviously, God's name has been mentioned, but not to that, on that level. So there's right there an influence that he's having. If he was Jewish, I don't know what kind of influence he would have had. In the middle of Netanyahu's speech, I noticed he was speaking in Hebrew, or was he speaking in English? I don't remember now. But suddenly he says, I want to cite a verse. I don't know how to translate it into Spanish. I'm sure they'll translate it for the president. And he silently cites the verse in Parsha Balak. Bilam, who's supposed to curse the Jews, ends up blessing them. And what verse does he cite? Hen kilavi yakum ukari yisnasa. Behold, a nation will rise like a lioness and be exalted like a lion. I was wondering, why this verse of all verses? And then he says, Milei is called a lion in Argentina. The Jewish people are called lions. Okay, this was Wednesday night. Thursday night, there was an event at the King David where they both signed a memo of agreement about peace and democracy. And then a very small group went to the Kaisel from King David. I was honored to go along. Only 6 people. The president, his sister, who's the head of chief of staff, the ambassador the Argentinian ambassador to Israel. His name is Axel Varnish. And this Kosel was completely empty, locked down. There was no one there. And literally you drive right up to the wall, all the way to the wall. There's no walking at all, in case you're interested. And true to form, the president gets out, President Milei, he hugs the Kosel, stands there a good few minutes praying, and then he hugged me, he hugged the ambassador, and a few minutes later, I knew this was all planned, Prime Minister Netanyahu pulls up. And the Kosel is completely empty, and he comes out, they embrace, and then they both go over to the wall, and we all sat together, Kapitel Kuf Chaf Aleph in Tehillim. And again, I noticed that Netanyahu, when he said the verse, Hine layonum v'layishn Shem Yisrael, he said it out loud, especially the word Shem Yisrael, that the protector of Israel does not sleep or slumber. And they translated it for the President Milei. The next thing, and I'm literally standing there, the next thing I notice is Netanyahu says to Milei, he's asking him permission. He wants to stand. He wants to pray privately. Can he have a few minutes on his own? And of course, Milei says yes. And he moves over to another side of the Kosel, a few feet away, and begins to daven. And then he asks for a talis. And all this was like, I realized something's going on here. I didn't fully comprehend. I had no idea that this was just for the record. If this is like Dateline, it's a few hours before the launch against Iran. That would be 2 a.m. We're now around 7:30, 8 p.m. Thursday night. Okay. He asked for a talis. For some reason, he didn't like the first talis. They brought him a second talis. No, it wasn't a Chabad talis for those that are interested. And then he takes out a note from his pocket and he puts it in the wall. Later we would find out what that note said. It was the same verse that he quoted in the Knesset the night before, Wednesday night. Hey nom kilavi yokum ukari yisnasa. I went over to Netanyahu after a few minutes and I said maybe it would be nice to have President Milei come over and you could both and I just felt it was like, so he said, sure, absolutely. And that's where you'll see some of the pictures of Milei and him. I'm in that picture as well, in case you're wondering. Right by the Kosel. And nobody's rushing anywhere. It was all seemingly just part of the... From there, we go for a tour to the tunnels. You know the tunnels right near the wall. And so one of the rabbis connected to the tunnels gave the tour. Again, a small group of us. And we go in and we see the remnants of Bayis Sheni, the second temple. Then the first temple, they dug even deeper. They pull out a coin that they discovered that says Netanyahu ben, I forgot what it said, Ben Sion, not Sion, another name. And Netanyahu so proudly says that's his name. It's a coin from the first Beis HaMikdash, from the first temple. Milei asked if he can take it. They said, no, we have something for you. This stays here. Just for the record. Anyway, this tour went at least 30, 40 minutes. No rush. We're ready now, 8:30, 9 p.m. probably. And then finally, it came to an end. Netanyahu goes off in his car, Milei in his. I went back with Milei to the King David because we all had a flight that night. I was flying to New York. My flight was after midnight, 12:05. And Milei was flying to Madrid. But it was approximately the same time. And we left the hotel also same time, around 10 p.m. He went with his police escort. I went alone with my wife. And come to the airport. Everything, again, seems like business as usual. The flight takes off. There were 3 flights that night. I was on one flight. I forgot the name of it. It's one of these new flights connected to Italian Airlines. Anyone knows the name? Whatever. Arkia, right. And there was a United flight and an El Al flight. Our flight was the last one. Around 2 a.m., flying to New York. And we have Wi-Fi. And I look at my phone. And I see war broke out. Israel attacked Iran. And the airport was closed. And I start looking, when was it closed? We were literally the last flight out. So there's no question they waited till Millet would leave. I don't know if they cared if I left or not, but Millet for sure. And I'm looking at it, and then I look, what is the name of the operation? Rising Lion. Kilava Yokum. Ukariyas Nasa. And everything came back to me. And I said, 1 second, what's going on here? Just a few hours ago, we're standing at the Kotel. And we're visiting the remnants of what? Of Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni. And here we have the president of a Western Roman country. Argentina is a Catholic Christian country. That comes from Rome. And we have Netanyahu representing Eretz Yisrael. And they're attacking the country Iran is called Paras, Persia. Persia was conquered by, were the ones that conquered Babylon, Bavel, that destroyed the first Beis Hamikdash. Story of Purim. And here we're all standing, and Israel's attacking Iran. And now I'm here 6 weeks later, and I'm thinking about it. We're in the 9 days, which are marked by the fact that the Babylonians and the Romans destroyed the first and second temple, respectively. The Shalah writes that the month of is Aleph Beis. It's an acronym, a Rosh Tevis. You know what? Edom, Bavel, Rome, and Babylon. And where is modern-day Babylon? Iran, Iraq, Paras, that area. And then I remind myself the note to Rabbi Greenglass and the other sources and tell me this is not history unfolding. And then we see the miracles of how the war was won in Iran. Halavai should be that way in Gaza. Whatever God's plan there, I don't really know. But we know the end will be good. And how they miraculous, not one casualty, 1,400 miles away from Israel, and able to pinpoint and kill the nuclear scientists and the military leaders. Yes, we had, unfortunately, even one casualty is more than enough in Eretz Yisrael. But relatively speaking, such miracles. Literally the fulfillment. And all this is happening with one more thing just to throw in if you want to have another Hashgacha Pratis. In the middle of this war is also the 23rd of Sivan, which is mentioned directly in the Megillah, that this is the day when the king of Persia, called Achashverosh, said to the Jews and gave them permission to destroy all their enemies. And La Yehudim Oisa Erev V'Simcha V'Sasim V'Yakar, that we say every Motzei Shabbos, is on the 23rd of Sivan. That's when it happened. The actual victory over the enemies was on Purim, but the decree came on the 23rd of Sivan. And here we are honoring, of all things, Tzidkas Eretz Yisrael, Colel Chabad. Eretz Yisrael, the center of the universe. The place that Yaakov Avinu said, Zeh Shara Shamayim, this is the gate to heaven. Do you ever wonder why everybody's fighting over the same little piece of land for thousands of years? Yishmael, Esav, Yaakov, Eretz Yisrael. Because it's the center, it's ground zero, it's the place where heaven meets earth. It's the place of the Beis HaMikdash. Every time you go to the old city, you're reminded. Yeah, the Jewish quarter, the Christian quarter, the Muslim quarter. There you have your Yishmael, Esav, and the Yidden. How the Armenians get in there, I don't really know. That's another story. How they smuggle themselves in. And right there on the Har HaBayis, you have the whole story. You have the Har HaBayis, today a desolate wilderness, but the Muslims stuck their mosques there. And then you hear the bells ringing every Friday or Sunday or whatever. Because this is whether the Goyim know it or not, Mazlaya Chazi, this is the center of the universe. Everything is around that. What does Iran have with Israel? Can you tell me rationally why Iran wants to destroy Israel? Is it a threat to them? Do they want the resources? What do they want? It goes back to primal battles that go back all the way thousands of years ago. And here we have the opportunity, all of us, to make that difference, because at the end of the day, our response to all of this is like we'll say in the Haftarah this Shabbos Chazon, Tziyem b'mishpat tipada v'shaveh b'tzdaka. After all the negative events, we always look and see the positive. That at the end of the day, we will rebuild Tzion with mishpat, with Torah, with halacha, and b'tzdaka. V'shaveha, the captives, the hostages. How do you redeem hostages? The pasuk says clearly, b'tzdaka. And it's tzedakah, not just a tzedakah, but it's tzedakah connected directly to Eretz Yisrael that goes back almost 250 years. And here we are in a Malchus Shel Chesed, another country connected to Edom. You cannot connecting the dots, you see a bigger picture emerging. So it's not just, and I don't want to say the word just, it's really not appropriate. Every kindness, every act of tzedakah is as powerful as it gets. But you see also a global narrative unfolding, and we have the schus and the merit to be here today and to be part of this process, because exactly as Rabbi Zalman pointed out, we take initiative, we don't wait. My father, some of you may know, my father was good friends with Rabbi Shalom Duchman's father, Yisrael, and both of us, long Friday nights, trying to schlep them to come home to the meal, but they were busy talking on some corner, wherever it may be, right? So my father, as a journalist, often would say, tell me there are three types of people: people who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who ask what happened. The Jewish people were always people who made things happen. Proactive, we didn't wait. And here we are, each in our own way, the opportunity to tip the scales. That's exactly what a Maisa Echad does, a good deed, as the Rambam writes. In a time like no other. I mean, every time, as I said, was special. But now, it's very clear. Eretz Yisrael is right at the center of things. It dominates every headline, every day. Now it's the UK, yesterday it was France and Canada, both the anti-Semite, like a lightning rod, or they call the miner's canary. The Jewish people just simply are the center of everybody's attention. And hopefully only for the good. And that's how we have to see it. So our actions are not just isolated, but they affect the entire world. So, as I said, I could not ignore the Hashgacha Pratis, the divine providence of us coming together in the 9 days, when the whole mission of the 9 days is to see the vision that Rabbi Akiva at the end of Masechta Makkah says, where others saw destruction, he saw the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash. He had special eyes. That here we are together as Jews in the 9 days, on the 5th of Av, should add the Yortzeit, the Hilula of the Arizal, yet another force in Eretz Yisrael, in Sfas. So we have the opportunity to do our part to really make things happen and cause true change. Because at the end of the day, every battle is fought on a physical front, but also on a spiritual front. And the Pasuk says it clearly. Tziyem b'mishpat tipada v'shaveh b'tzdaka. Hashem should bless us all. Bless Colel Chabad, the entire team, all of you, who are all partners and initiators. That Yohavchi Yom Meil L'Sasna L'Simcha L'Meidim Tevim. We should quickly see how these days are not just eliminated, but transformed into holidays and celebrations with the Gula Amitis V'Ashlema even before Tisha B'Av. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you.